Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Macmillan Education Iberia event, Building a Bilingual Future, starting in pre-primary. My name is Louise Connolly, and I'm the events manager at Macmillan Education Iberia. I would like to thank you all for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join us here this evening. I see that we have many viewers from Spain and Portugal, but also from other countries, including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the UK, and also I think as well the USA, and there may be some other countries as well that I've missed out. So I really want to welcome you all. Thank you for joining us from all different parts of the world. It's wonderful to have you all here today. This is a very special event. We're delighted because we have Carol Reid here, who is the author of Big Wheel, or Mimi's Wheel, or Ferris Wheel. Carol has specialized in ELT for the last over 30 years as a teacher trainer, academic manager, author and educational consultant. She specializes, as you all know, in early years and primary English language education. And her most recent publication, I mean most recent because there are many others for both pre-primary and primary that she has published with Macmillan Education. But Big Wheel, or Mimi's Wheel, or Ferris Wheel is the latest publication for pre-primary. During Carol's talk, which is Wheels of Learning, Key to Preschool Success Now and in the Future, you will have the opportunity to interact with Carol. We will launch a couple of interactions which are called Have Your Says. These will appear on your screen, and all you have to do is write a short response to the question posed. We'll also, at the end of Carol's talk, allow a space for you to ask questions. So we'll have a question and answer slot. So basically, Carol's talk will be from 6:05 to 7:05, followed by the question and answer slot. And then at 7:15, I'll invite my colleague, Susana Lopez, to come on so that she can do a short presentation of Big Wheel with you. And I just want to say that we will be recording this event. We will send the recording as well as a certificate of attendance in approximately 1 week's time to you all. And at the very end of the event, I will invite you to participate in a very short SurveyMonkey questionnaire so that you can give your opinion on the event, on the experience, and also there's a question there if you're interested in finding out more about this wonderful course, Big Wheel, for pre-primary. We will get in contact with you and explain it in more detail. So, with no further ado, I would like to say welcome, Carol. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. It's a real pleasure. And I've missed doing webinars with you. So I'm delighted that in 2021, I have the opportunity again to be here with you. Thank you.
That's great. No, thank you very much, Louise, for that lovely introduction. It's lovely for me to be here with you, and thank you to everybody for coming. You know, preschool teaching has long been a passion of mine. And in this webinar, I've selected to share with you 6 key areas that I really think help children get ahead learning English in preschool and lay solid foundations for their future learning and their lives. And the areas that we're going to look at are these. You can see them all there. I'm not going to read them all. I'm not going to read them out, but you can read them. And I'd like to start off with the blue pod in the top right. So the role of games and play. So we play games all the time in the classroom. We play games with flashcards, we play games with real objects, we play games with our puppet, of course, we play games with our feely bag, maybe, and games have explicit rules and thinking skills involved in following and applying the rules. And games are usually adult or teacher led. So for example, a practical example might be a what's missing game with flashcards or real objects, and here in this case with food vocabulary. So are you ready? What's missing? Everybody ready to tell me? Okay, what's missing? Yes, of course, you're right. It's the tomato. Are you ready for another one? Looking closely, ready? It's the chocolate. Fantastic. Okay, or we might play a memory game, and I might cover all of the objects, all 10, and see if the children can remember them all. Okay, so that actually, there are big differences between games and play. Play is make-believe, pretend, free. It's sometimes called symbolic play. And this is the kind of play where children create imaginary situations in which they take on and act out roles. And it's usually child-initiated. So children learn by imitating, experimenting, problem solving, making their own decisions. And a practical example of play might be playing house with imaginary friends and family. And I think it's important for us to be aware of how games and play contribute differently to children's development. So in terms of cognitive development, games with rules develop the ability to follow instructions. They also develop cognitive skills such as logical deduction, matching, or memory, as we just saw in the little game now. Whereas play, on the other hand, develops the ability to think creatively and flexibly, to solve problems, to manage relationships with other people, and develop empathy. In terms of language development, they're also different too. Games with rules, we usually have a specific focus on learning vocabulary or structures and repeated practice, listening to instructions and listening to others. Whereas play offers a context for children to take risks and communicate using all the language that they have available. In terms of cells, social and emotional learning, of course, games with rules provide experience with emotional issues such as learning to lose a game and also learning to conform to rules and norms, learning to cooperate and take turns, learning about the concept of fairness and actually to respect that. Whereas play offers different opportunities, certainly opportunities also for social development in terms of empathy, listening to others, turn-taking, collaborating, and also rehearsal at managing emotions and conflict, and develops autonomy and responsibility. So actually, we need a balance of both for children to really get ahead. And of course, we're likely to use many more teacher-led games than child-initiated play in our lessons, since they provide targeted language practice, they're much easier to manage and control, and children are less likely to use their mother tongue. At the same time, it is important for us to try and provide some balance and give opportunities to children for play as well. And we can do this by an emphasis on games, especially at first, and the creation of familiar formats. Now, a format, this is based on the work of Jerome Bruner, and he talks about a format as a routinized and repeated interaction in which an adult and a child do things to and with each other. In other words, to put this in straightforward language, all the activities, games, routines, dialogues, and repeated exchanges that we use in our lessons over and over again provide a model and scaffolding for children to improvise and develop their own creative versions when they have an opportunity for free play. For example, at some point, we may play a flashcard game or with real objects like What's Missing with every lexical set we introduce. And children become so familiar with the procedure and the language that they are able to lead the game themselves. And this is what Bruner calls the handover principle. In other words, the increase in the children's independent role as you withdraw. So let's see how formats work in practice and how this can really help us to get children ahead learning English. Following Bruner, formats consist of a structure, roles, and a script. And the teacher, we, are the mediator in creating the structure, role, and script and engaging children in repeated play-like activities which children join in, memorize, internalize, and then use in their own play. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So the first one, okay, an action rhyme using the puppet Mimi. Okay, so the structure is essentially, you've got to behave yourself, Mimi. We're online, you know, you've got to be a good girl. Okay, so the structure is a set of realization rules by which the game is managed. In other words, it's basically what we do. Okay. So, and the role is the role that you play and your puppet, for example. So in this one, it's the teacher with the puppet, and the game may be simply with a beckoning signal, follow, follow, follow me, walk, 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 1, 2, 3. Okay, everybody, and follow, follow, follow me, jump, 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 1, 2, 3, and so on. So that kind of action game that we could repeat with many, many different kinds of actions. Let's have a look at another example here. And this is an example based on the big wheel mat. If you didn't have a big wheel mat, you don't have to worry. You could sort of turn the flashcards over or something. You can see I've got the big wheel mat actually behind me here. You might be able to see it. So in this one, very simply, the teacher puts the flashcards face down in the pockets and invites the children to take turns to guess the flashcards. So, for example, what's in the blue pocket? Can you guess? It's a car. Yes, yes, yes. Or no, it isn't. Okay. And obviously with that positive feedback, you're right. Very good. And so actually what we're talking about here, the key to children to getting ahead is to create these repeated scenarios or formats that give children confidence and familiarity in using language. And this allows them to internalize language and make it their own. But we mustn't stop there, or if we can possibly not, we want to take it a step further because we want to give children opportunities to use language in their own creative ways during free play. And one way to do this is through creating learning stations. Now, a learning station is a space in the classroom with materials and resources which you have used in teacher-led games, which are made available for children to play with. So, for example, a learning station might include a class puppet and a set of flashcards, or it might include story cards and small picture cards, or paper and crayons, or tablets and headphones, and so on. Now, the idea is that children take turns to alternate completing an activity at their table to visiting learning stations you've set up, in pairs or small groups. Pairs much easier to manage. You only need to create 1 or 2 learning stations, one new one at the time. And at the end of each unit, and depending on the number of children you have and the layout of your classroom, you may decide to devote a whole lesson to getting children to play at different learning stations. You need to encourage children to play in English, but encourage, not insist, and also for them to use our quiet voices. And the benefits are they provide you with an opportunity to work with and give extra support to small groups of children who are not at the learning station in turn. And it's important for you not to interfere, but you can eavesdrop and get feedback on how children play and how they're using the language. And there are advantages in terms of developing children's autonomy and responsibility. And you can see for yourself, because what tends to happen, and I promise this is true, you just have to try it. Children tend to replicate the activities that they've done with you in class. All those games, those formats that they're so familiar with. They use chunks of language they've learnt. They're very strict about correcting each other very often and helping each other. And in my experience, one of the favorite activities that children like playing in a learning station is playing teacher. So we can see there how our structured, controlled activities are so important in repeating and over and giving children this internal resource for using language themselves. Now, stories, let's move on to the next area that we're going to have a look at. There it is in green there, learning through stories. And I'm sure I don't have to convince any of you out there how powerful a vehicle our stories are for developing language skills, thinking skills, sequencing, deducing, predicting, creative thinking, and also, of course, social and emotional learning, empathy, imagination, deliberate memory, cultural awareness, all these things. And plus, of course, and perhaps you might say most importantly, they give sheer pleasure and enjoyment. So let's have a look at an example now of a story. And I'm going to tell you this story. And what I'd like you to do is to actually think about, while I tell you the story, what features of the story support children's learning. And at the end of the story, as Louise mentioned earlier on, we'll have a have your say, and I'd love you to contribute your ideas. So this story then is actually called Let's Go by Bike. Okay, and there are Mummy and Daddy, Mimi and Dylan, and they're going to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Oh, great, says Mimi. I love Grandma and Grandpa. Let's go by bike. Oh, yes, please, says Dylan. I want to go by bike too. Come on then, says Mummy. Let's go by bike. Hooray! Thank you. Oh dear, it's raining, says Daddy. We can't go by bike, says Mummy. Oh no, says Mimi. I've got an idea. Let's go by car. Oh yes, please, says Dylan. I want to go by car too. Come on then, let's go by car. Hooray! Thank you. Oh dear. Look at the wheel. We can't go by car. Oh no, I've got an idea. Let's go by train. Oh yes, please. I want to go by train too. Come on then. Let's go by train. Hooray! Thank you. Oh dear, the train is full. We can't go by train. Come on then, says Daddy. Let's go home. Oh no, I want to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Me too, says Dylan. Please, Mummy, please, Daddy. No, sorry. We can't go to Grandma and Grandpa's house today. Let's go home. Aww. Oh, look! Here's Mrs. Cat and the school bus. I've got an idea, says Mimi. Let's go by bus. Hello, Mrs. Cat. Hello, Mimi. Hello, Dylan. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Meerkat. Hop on. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Cat. We want to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. No problem. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Cat. Hello, Grandpa. Hello, Grandma. Hello, Mimi. Hello, Dylan. Come in and bring all your friends. It's time for a snack. Oh, thank you, Grandma. Thank you, Grandpa. Come on, everyone. Hooray! Okay, so there's the story. And now have your say. I'd love to
Yeah,
know what you
that was
think. What?
wonderful, Carol. You had us enthralled there. I wanted to participate. I wanted to get involved. I was almost about to jump in and say, let me in.
Okay, so
I,
what features of the story support children's learning? That's Please contribute
exactly.
your ideas.
Absolutely. Please write your answers now. The question is on your screen. What features of the storytelling support children's learning? And let's see, we'll just give people a couple of seconds to do that. It was kind of, there was a cliffhanger, again and again. So what's going to happen? And it was wonderful. I really did want to take part. So we've got some repetition, lots of
Lovely,
structures. We're also
lovely.
getting some lovely comments, Carol. People saying that was very, very nice. They've enjoyed it. Let's see, different voices.
Yes,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, and the
And
repetition there.
the repetition is repeating, is being repeated a lot by
Absolutely,
people.
absolutely.
Teacher's voice as well, and the use of vocabulary. And I
Right.
would add one myself, the idea of, well, apart from language, the idea of putting forward solutions to problems, so problem solving, coming up with an
Absolutely. Yes,
alternative solution. The
yes. They're
kids,
full of
Mimi
ideas,
is,
Mimi and
is
Dylan.
they're full of ideas, and kids, when they really want to do something. I remember when I was a kid and something wasn't going to happen, then you would come up with ideas. Oh, but we could, yeah.
Absolutely.
So yes, it's a very natural response, isn't it?
Okay, that's
um
fantastic.
yes, fantastic. Thank you,
Okay,
everybody.
wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, what I want us to look at now, and that's fantastic, all your ideas, is how we scaffold children's learning from the story, because you mentioned, a lot of you, about the repetition, and that of course is crucial. And so what I want us to have a look at now is to go on to the next pod on the wheel, and to actually look at questions and other scaffolding techniques. Now, scaffolding is the metaphor used to describe the support that children need to carry out activities and lead them to greater understanding and more independent learning. As the metaphor implies, scaffolding can be put up or taken down according to children's capabilities and needs. It can also be applied differently to individual children, and of course, it can be applied differently if we're working in a context where we want our children to really get ahead in English. So in a story like this, the typical questions that get asked at this age is going to be things like, who's this? Mimi. What colour is the bus? Yellow. Very good. Is it raining? Yes. Now, these questions are really important in allowing children to display what they know, but they don't take thinking any further, and also language. So these kind of questions are really important for encouragement and participation, but they are limiting if we don't move beyond this. And the important thing for us as teachers is to think about the questions you're going to ask and the kind of thinking skills you want to develop before you tell the story. And I would also say that if you ask too many questions, it spoils the flow and enjoyment of the story. You can also address diversity in your classes by directing different questions to different children, depending on their confidence and competence. And obviously, if you understand the children's shared language, which I know that most of you here do, you can also ask some questions and accept responses in that too. So let's have a look at examples of possible questions in relation to the story that we've just done. And I think it's important for us to relate the thinking focus to the questions. So I'm not going to read all of those out there, but you can see, for example, the sequencing, the third one down, where, you know, how do they try and go first? And then, okay, so that's actually sequencing, understanding chronological order, and also, of course, it's the recall of the story. And we also have, you know, at the last one there, future hypothesizing, or I could have actually put creative thinking there. What do they do at Grandma and Grandpa's house? What snack do they have? How do they go home? Do they go home by Mrs. Cat's bus, or do they go home another way? Okay, so that questions have a very important role in our scaffolding. In other words, in moving children's understanding of the language of the story to actually being able to produce it themselves. And we can also use many other tools for scaffolding. And one that I always love using is song as scaffolding. Because very often with young children, song provides a transition or a bridge from understanding the language in the context of the story to children using it themselves. And with an activity like this, they may first listen and point to the pictures, and then do the actions, and then act out in two groups. So let's listen to the song and do the actions now. And if you're at home,
listen,
I can't check that you're doing
sing,
it, but try.
I want to go by bike.
I want to go by bike, by bike. Oh yes, please, me too.
Come on then, let's go by bike.
I want to go with you. I want to go by car, by car. Oh.
Come on then, let's go by car.
I want to go with you. I want to go by train, by train. Oh yes, please, me too.
Come on then, let's go by train.
I want to go with you. I want to go by bus, by bus. Oh yes, please, me too.
Come on then, let's go by bus.
I want to go with you. Yay!
Okay, so in a song, very good, beautifully acted
No,
out, Louise.
well, more or less, a few
Fantastic,
little.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that song, and you please will have to forgive me if you go around singing it. You have it in your head all evening because
I
they're
will
very
do.
catching. They're very catching, these songs. Okay, but so that song, we're beginning to see how children are starting to use, the key language from the story. And another element technique for scaffolding is to actually use it a game. So, for example, in our circle time, we might have flashcards face up on the carpet and invite one child to pick up a card and say, I want to go by plane. Okay. Or just plain, because the children may not be able to say the whole chunk. Some of them will. Okay. We'll be encouraging that. And then we get another child to respond, me too. Okay. And then what the children do is they stand up and they go round the circle pretending to be in whatever vehicle they've decided. And in a little game like that, they can use more or less language in the exchange. But this is building up. This is preparing the children, leading them towards feeling confident about doing a story dialogue or role play. And as we can see here, this is again where the idea of the format comes in. In the same way that we saw with games, we can scaffold children's learning by creating these formats which use repeated language based on the interactive exchanges in the story. And we build it up to a dialogue or role play that we can do with the whole class, with half the class, and it's based on the story and using our flashcards. So I want to go by bike. Oh, yes, please, me too. Come on then, let's go by bike. Oh, no, we can't. Okay, let's go by car, and so on. So actually, we're leading the children from that receptive understanding of the language in the context of the story to actually using it and acting it out themselves. And then, of course, if you have a learning station, and in your learning station, you put your story cards or your flashcards, the children are likely to repeat the kinds of activities that you've done in the whole class teacher-led activities. And this moves us on to the next really important area for us to consider. And this is here in yellow. And this is early interactive speaking skills. And this, I think, is particularly important if we're working with children who are having more time and we really want them to get ahead and we want them to begin to be able to interact using language chunks rather than just discrete items of vocabulary. And I think some of the key points to mention here is that children need frequent, repeated models to imitate and copy. There is no way round this. This is what we need for learning a new language, getting our tongues and our heads and our brains around the sounds. So frequent, repeated models. And they also need repetition of the same language in different contexts, recycling, if you like. But, so for example, a chunk like, can I have? We might use it in relation to the flashcards, to classroom objects, to the books, to giving out materials. Okay. Another key point is that we need to give positive feedback and encouragement, but, we can't push this and we can't oblige if children are not ready. So there's no question of obligation because that will just put up the barriers. In fact, what we need is more frequent models, more frequent teacher-led games or whatever. And I would also say another thing I would say that I think sometimes we shy away from because maybe we think it's not meaningful, but don't shy away from choral repetition. And we can always make choral repetition, you know, fun. I mean, we can repeat it in a happy voice and in a sad voice and in a soft voice. I mean, there are ways that we can do it to make it very play-like and ludic, if you like. So I think one of the first areas of early interactive speaking skills that we can think about is in relation to the whole area of learning routines. And just to give an example now, with a learning routine that I'm sure all of you do, you know, it's a very common learning routine. We all do this. You know, we go to the classroom window, we look out of the window, we ask, what's the weather like today? And we hold up a flashcard and we go, is it sunny today? And we model the answer and we encourage the children to say with you, no, it isn't. Okay. Then we repeat with other flashcards. Is it rainy? No, it isn't. Is it windy? No, it isn't. Is it cloudy? Yes, it is. Okay. And what happens with that as the children become familiar with the language and the routine, what happens is actually you no longer need to use the flashcards when you ask children the questions, and they will respond, yes, it is, no, it isn't, as a chunk, as a language chunk. They can't break it up, of course, without your prompting. And after more time, they'll also learn to respond directly to the question. So actually, you'll go over to the window and you'll say, what's the weather like? And they'll say, it's sunny, okay? And so actually you've moved that routine on, and more confident children may then also be able to lead the activity instead of you, the handover principle that I mentioned earlier. And of course, when you do that weather routine, you know, you can also allow for creative responses. I always, I love one day a child in my class, you know, what's the weather like today? And he said, it's sunny, cloudy, because of course we don't have a word for when it's sunny, but there are also clouds in the sky. And so he'd created that compound description, which was wonderful. Okay, so learning routines, really important for initial interaction skills, as are videos. Videos, because the wonderful thing about videos is that they give children real life models that they can relate to. So, for example, children might watch a video of Sam and Anna there asking Uncle Dan about food. So let's just watch this now and find out, what does Dan like?
Come on, Sam. Come on, Anna. Let's make lunch.
What food do you like, Uncle Dan?
Oh, yes. Tell us, Uncle Dan.
Well, I like milk and I like eggs.
Do you like bread, Uncle Dan?
No, I don't. I don't like bread and I don't like cereal.
Do you like apples?
Yes, I do. I like apples and I like bananas.
Do you like carrots, Uncle Dan?
No, I don't. I don't like carrots, but I like ice cream. It's a treat. How about you? Do you like ice cream?
Yes, I do.
Me too. It's yummy.
Okay, so in a little video like that, and of course children, they get to know these characters, Sam and Anna and Uncle Dan. But the reason I really wanted to, obviously there's listening practice there, and then we would obviously get them to report back the food that Dan likes. He likes milk, eggs, apples, bananas, ice cream, of course. Okay. And I didn't ask, as you noticed, I didn't ask children to think about what he doesn't like as well, because that's quite challenging for children to think of both at the same time. So, but what I wanted to use this to show you was that actually don't shy away from, when we've watched the video and we've got them on our screen, say, let's ask that Uncle Dan about the food he likes, and get the children to ask you the questions with you in chorus. So, do you like bread, Uncle Dan? Do you like eggs, Uncle Dan? Do you like apples, Uncle Dan? Okay, and the children are repeating those questions to Uncle Dan in the same way that Sam and Anna do. You can also then get them to ask you the questions. So we've got this repetition practice, but it's really important because what we're actually doing is laying the foundations for children to then be able to do a little role play and actually ask each other in pairs. And later on, if you set up a learning station, for example, with plastic food, like the food I used in the What's Missing activity at the start of the session, you're likely to find that what the children will do is pretend to be Uncle Dan, Sam, and Anna. So I think what we have to remember, to get to that communication, we need those very clear stepping stones on the way. And it's this that gives children the confidence and familiarity to use chunks of language and move beyond just vocabulary, for example. And one other thing I would like to say in relation to this area, and this is in terms of preparing children for interaction, because it actually helps to be explicit about what's involved. Children need to know what actually do you want them to do. So here is a little song, it's kind of ask a question, say the answer, yes or no, take turns with your partner, off you go. Okay, so we're actually setting it up in a very explicit way. And this supports children's learning. They need to know very clearly what to do. So moving on now to our next area on the wheel. And this is social and emotional learning, okay? And this is obviously a major area of learning for all of us, not only children. And I would like us to start off by sharing our thoughts and ideas. What do you understand by social and emotional learning? So if we back to Louise
Yes.
and another
Yes.
have your say here, will be
This
fantastic.
is a second have your say. As Carol said, the question is now on your screen. The question is, what do you understand by social and emotional learning? And you can write short answers. You don't need to write complete sentences. Short answers are fine.
Yeah.
We'd love words, exactly, key words. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your ideas, what you understand by social and emotional learning. So we'll give you a couple of seconds for that. Okay. Let's just see. There's some answers coming in. There is an answer, yes. Ask the pupils, how are you today? So finding out from the pupils, helping people, helping others. Manners, I suppose, being polite, being respectful, friendship as well. Great. Empathy, expressing empathy towards others. Skills, somebody sort of defined it as being skills we need to understand and manage emotions.
Fantastic, lovely.
That's a nice way of
Absolutely.
encapsulating it, isn't it? Teaching the ability to identify and modify your emotions, as well as recognizing the emotions of others, building a sense of community. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Values
Lovely.
education, motivation to learn. Lots of great ideas coming in. Thank you very much, everybody.
Fantastic. And I think that's absolutely all your ideas have really captured the way that social and emotional learning is this kind of umbrella term. And it is actually so important. It really underpins children's confidence, their self-esteem, and their physical and mental well-being. And it's really an essential foundation for their thinking and learning. And I'd just like to share with you now a definition of social and emotional learning, which I think it just captures it very well. So there it is. I'm not going to read that out, but just have a little moment to read it. So, and also it captures, that definition captures a lot of the things that you also mentioned. So it's a hugely important area. And I think what we need to think about is how we develop children's social and emotional learning. And essentially, I think there are two ways. And the first way is, if you like, by osmosis. It's actually looking for every opportunity to develop and enhance SEL within all aspects of our everyday teaching. But also we can use explicit instruction and specific activities. So let's have a look at the osmosis side to start off with. And this is not rocket science, but at the same time, it is hugely important that children feel valued and cared for by the teacher, an environment that is colorful and stimulating, that not overstimulating, that also values their work, displays of their work, and things like birthday charts and can you guess the baby? And also, of course, we use our puppet to also set up the warm and caring learning environment as well. The next thing, through modeling and by example. And modeling, actually going through the language process and the thinking process that children need to know before they do an activity. It's all very obvious to us, but it isn't to children. So we need clear demonstrations. We also need, of course, praise, positive encouragement, and feedback. And our praise needs to focus on effort and behavior, as well as just achievement. And also we need to use descriptive praise so that children actually understand what it is that they've done well. And that builds up their social and emotional bank of things they know about themselves that they can do. We need to set clear expectations and parameters. And I think I've mentioned this in a way indirectly already, that children have a right and a need to know what we expect of them and the boundaries for behavior. And of course, we do this through our lesson routines and our lesson plans, which frame this when we're teaching. We also need to have a positive, proactive rather than reactive approach to classroom management. We need to train children in good social and good learning habits. And this is obviously built up through learning routines, through values education, and through social and emotional learning. We also need to provide children with opportunities for choice and decision making. And this doesn't need to be big decisions, but for example, it might be, which activity we do now. Do you want to sing the song about transport, or shall we play a game? Or the order of activities, or how to complete a project, whether with crayons or paint, if you have that option. And this develops children's self-esteem, their responsibility and investment in their own learning. And leading on from that, we also need to provide opportunities for agency and autonomy. For example, in the development of life skills, putting on your own coat and shoes. And this helps develop self-regulation and self-management. And also, of course, age-appropriate cell-related activities. That's the explicit way that we're going to have a little look at now. And one more thing that I would mention here, and that is integrated values education that actually explicitly develops things such as kindness, respect, effort, willingness to help others, and so on. So let's have a look at a few examples of specific activities that we might do. And here's one for our very littlest learners, our 3-year-olds. I just love the picture of them in the mirror there because this is a diversity classroom. And one thing that I have, and which is very useful actually, is I have a sort of class set of plastic. They're not breakable. They're not very good quality. Little like handbag mirrors. So what children do is they look at themselves in the mirror and they point and say, my eyes are special, my nose is special, my mouth is special, I'm happy, I'm me. And there's a song that they can sing with it. And then they draw a self-portrait. And the teacher, you can show the pictures to the class and comment positively on the features, and children guess who they are. And this is a lovely way of building up their self-esteem. Also, awareness of feelings. This is really, really important, that children become aware of their feelings and other people's feelings. And this song that we're not actually going to sing now, but you can see the text there. Be kind to your friends when they're happy. Be kind to your friends when they're sad. And then the last verse, which is so important, be kind to your friends as they're kind to you. Remember, your friends have feelings too. So this actually, beginning to consider, to step in the shoes of other people and understand how they're feeling. And of course, there's lots of other things we can do with that. I think someone mentioned it actually in the Have Your Say. We can use our puppet to ask, how are you feeling at the start of lessons, and to talk about feelings. We can play a game where we throw and catch feelings. I'm throwing you happy feelings now. Okay, and we can mime and guess the feelings. And you also mentioned empathy, which is obviously hugely important. And this is something that I think, stories play a hugely important role here, of moving beyond egocentricity and learning to think of others and not just themselves. And in this story, you see Mimi at the table there, and this is a poor Katie kangaroo, and she's on her first day at school and she doesn't like it at all. And Mimi is really trying very hard to be kind to her. But Katie kangaroo, the only thing she really wants to do is to jump. And when it's announced that the children should go outside, Mimi suggests that they all jump, and all the children jump. But of course, Katie kangaroo is absolutely fantastic at jumping. And at the end, the two become the best of friends. And so that's a lovely way of exploring being kind to others, but in a fictional context. So there's no threat about having to talk about yourself. Another important aspect of social and emotional learning, of course, is learning to cooperate. And we can do this with a little rhyme or game that actually talks about cooperation, and children actually do it. So let's do this together now. And Louise, are you coming back on to do it with me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, great. So we just clap and then clap each other's hand. Let's work together. Let's cooperate. I help you, you help me. It's great. It's great.
Great.
Let's work
Let's
together.
work together.
Let's
Let's
cooperate.
cooperate.
I share with you, you share with
you
me.
share with
It's
me.
great.
Great.
It's great. Fantastic. Wonderful. We're cooperating very well. Considering it's virtual cooperation, I think we're doing fantastically. Okay. And somebody also mentioned that cell is to do with learning to manage emotions, and to do with learning to wait, to not having what you want immediately, to taking turns, to keeping calm. So let's just have a look at a few things we can do for that. So for example, a little settling down rhyme. I'm quiet as a mouse, as still as can be. No noise at all. Look at me. Okay. And then there we got all the little mice sitting quietly, and then we can begin our activity. Or for example, at the start of circle time, sit down, cross your legs, hands together, just like me. Ready to learn, ready to play. Let's start our lesson. 1, 2, 3. And I've also included here a mindfulness chant. Some of you may be familiar with mindfulness. It's certainly very popular in many UK preschools and primary schools at the moment. So this to do with focusing on the present moment to calm children down and prevent anxiety. So you can do this with me at home. I breathe in, I breathe out. 1, 2, 3. I close my eyes, I listen, I'm as calm as can be. And then the second verse, we can open the eyes. Okay, and the last area of cell that I'm going to mention today, and one that is actually particularly important, well, it's important for everyone, it's also important for us, but it is also particularly important for children who are really, getting ahead and learning English, and we are scaffolding their learning to produce that kind of achievement. And this is to do with the willingness to make an effort. And anyone who's familiar with the work of Carol Dweck on developing a growth mindset, so actually getting our children to believe that if they make an effort, they can achieve things that they want to achieve. So, Louise, are you coming back to join me? Let's let's sing this one. Okay, off we go.
Listen and sing, I can do it if I try.
I can do it if I try. Try, try. Yes, yes, yes. I can put on my coat. I can learn and play. I can put on my coat every day. I can do it if I try. Try, try. Yes, yes, yes. I can put on my shoes. I can learn and play. I can put on my shoes every day. I can do it if I try. Try, try. Yes, yes, yes. I can cut with scissors. I can learn and play. I can cut with scissors every day. I can do it if I try. Try, try. Yes, yes, yes. I can do it if I try. Try, try. Yes, yes, yes.
Fantastic.
We got there in the end.
Yeah, we did. Okay. Well, I can do it if I try. It's also, one of the wonderful things about a song like this, I can do it if I try, and the child is, maybe having to make an effort with something we've asked them to do. We can actually say, remember what Mimi sings and actually sing that. I can do it if I try. Okay. And I would also just mention that it also applies to us as teachers. You know, during the lockdown, when I did a session with a group of teachers, you know, we were singing. Well, I was singing. I don't know if they were at home, but you know, I can teach online. It's here to stay. I can teach online every day. I can do it if I try.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
yeah, exactly. It's important for us as well as for the children. And of course, it's wonderful to, you know, to establish that culture of making an effort in the classroom from a young age. Okay, so we're nearly at the, well, we are at the last segment on our wheel now. And this collaborative projects, and I think collaborative projects can be challenging with preschool. And the key is, I think, to get children to prepare something individually that contributes to a collaborative outcome. Because with our very small children, actually for them, you know, collaboration is a difficult skill. We can't just automatically expect them to do it at this age, but we can show them how, when they make a collaborative effort, the outcome is worthwhile and that it is worth that effort. So just a couple of examples of the kind of things that we might do in a project. So here's one where actually the children, they make a sort of clothesline of different clothes for summer and winter. But what I would like to highlight here is the importance of visual messaging so that children can see, you know, of course you're going to explain it, but they can actually see the materials they use, they see what they do, and they actually see the collaborative outcome. So that's one example with clothes. And here is another one with food, okay, where they're using modeling clay to make plates of favorite food. So, and again, the visual messaging is so important, and that every child contributes equally because they make their clothes that are going to go on the line or their food that's going to go on the plate and put it together, and there's this collaborative outcome. And I think as we're working through our projects, we need to think of, you know, the typical before, during, and after stages. And before, it's obviously really important to motivate children to do the project. They have to feel excited about it. And that's, you know, very often we can use our puppet to build up this excitement. And it also helps if you can show an example of the final outcome. You may just show a picture from the book, but if you can actually show an example, that makes it much more real. You also show and name the materials, and this is very important because over time, this is just kind of becomes part of the acquisitional knowledge of the children, that they know how to name the different materials, you know, the glue and the colors and the paints or whatever. We need to give clear instructions and guidelines. These need to be staged. And we also need to demonstrate and model the process using a think aloud technique. In other words, you actually talk through what you're going to do. So we're going to choose the colors and we're going to color the t-shirt or whatever it is, but you go through actually talking about it out loud. And also to teach or remind children of useful language to use during the project. Can I have the glue, please? I like your t-shirt, you know, whatever it is, but you need to actually remind children of that. And I think the other thing to say at this point is that different teachers in different schools have different approaches and attitudes towards projects. And if you want your project to be as simple as possible, then you've got templates provided for you that the children can use. If you want the project to be to take longer, to be perhaps more creative and to be paint-based and so on, you can do that as well, but you don't have to. And I think that's really important, because I know personally I've often worked in situations where there's no way that I can have children painting during the lessons, because there's not time to do that and to clear it all up. So you need that flexibility and to have the options. During the collaboration, of course, you need to monitor, but not interfere unless you have to. Use encouragement and praise, that's obvious. The project gives you a moment to be able to actually engage with individual children, to ask them questions. What color are you going to color the t-shirt, or whatever it is. You need to also advocate self-help and peer help, so actually actively encourage children to help each other. But stay back if you can, only get involved if necessary, and encourage the use of relevant language and acknowledge this, because it's absolutely fantastic. And then afterwards, you may get some children, not the whole class, it would be too boring, to present their work, but very much, and this is part of CEL, encourage positive feedback by peers. It's great. I like, your banana or whatever they've made. Ask reflection questions. Do you think you shared the crayons well during the project? And it doesn't matter if you're asking that in the children's shared language and not in English. I don't think that matters. The important thing is to actually begin that metacognitive process of getting them to think. You can do further activities or games based on the final outcome. In fact, it's a waste not to do this. So, for example, how many t-shirts are red? Or can you find 2 plates with bananas, or whatever it is? And the last point there, to actually make the team point being, and I'm sure you know this, many of you, as an acronym, together everyone achieves more. Okay, so that really brings me to the end of the session. We've talked through all these 6 areas. You can see them up there. I don't need to read them all out. And I hope it's given you some useful ideas for really, getting your children ahead in the early years, but having lots of creative fun at the same time. So that brings me to the end, really. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Carol. That was really, really inspiring. I think you've honestly laid the foundations, or shown us how important it is to lay really good, solid foundations in early years to prepare for success in the future in primary and beyond. And sometimes we underestimate that, and what we can achieve in early years with even our youngest pupils. That's been fantastic. Thank you so much. Now we have time for some questions from the audience. I mentioned at the beginning that we'll open up a question and answer forum now, and that is on your screen. So I would like to invite you all to ask any questions or send in comments as well. If you want to share your own experiences as well related to any of the points that Carol has discussed in her talk today, the different areas of the wheels of learning. You may work with projects, collaborative projects. You may work with learning stations. I found the learning stations, Carol, very, very interesting. That bridge from the bridge from games to play, and the importance of the routines and the modeling on the part of the teacher, and all of that as a way to encourage the acquisition and the use, let's say, yeah, of the language, and not just the language, but also forms of behavior and the thinking,
Absolutely.
etc. So, I mean, it was incredibly complete. That was wonderful. So, everybody, please send in your comments, your questions. We're getting some very nice thank yous, Carol, from people. People are thanking you very much for your ideas. And if anyone has a question, there might be, actually, I was thinking of a question while we wait. I had a question about moving from, the sort of the more repetition to the more independent. In your experience, have you noted, a period of time? Is there a kind of normal period of time which children have to go through in order to kind of start to become more independent in terms of reproducing the language? Or there probably isn't, but sometimes we have this desire
I
to
think
know,
I
is there? Yeah.
I think it's very individual. I think it's
Yeah.
very individual, and I think also even individual children, they may have months where they don't seem to be
Yes.
progressing very much, and then suddenly they leap forward. And
Yes.
there may be months where you think, actually, have they been taking this in? And then suddenly they
Yeah.
start coming out with language. I mean, I remember
Yes.
once, years ago, having a little girl in one of my classes, and she didn't really speak, and
Yes.
she was very happy in the lessons, and I just
Mm.
let that, and towards the end of the summer term, she suddenly, so
Yeah.
she suddenly blossomed and started, and so I actually realized that, it had all been going on in her head. And I think
Exactly.
that's why I also feel passionately that we should never force it.
I was
That
going to say, I think that's a really key point to make. And you've shown with the examples that you've just given us that children can surprise you. They're assimilating, they have their own process, and then it comes out and it comes and starts and bursts, and it's not a linear thing.
No, exactly, exactly. And I think the thing for us is it's very easy for us to forget how much children need these models. They need them repeated, repeated, and repeated, in the same way that they also need repeated how they're expected to behave. When they come into
Yes.
our classes, they don't know how they're supposed to
No,
behave. So how can we expect them to behave as we want unless we really train them? And the same
exactly.
with the language use. They need
Exactly.
those models, and that gives them this confidence. And then they start
Yes.
saying, I love it when they say, it's easy, it's so easy. Esto es fácil. You think,
Everybody.
yes, that's it. We're
Yes.
really
You
getting there
We're
because
making progress.
you're,
We're really advancing. That's
yeah.
wonderful. Absolutely. And there's a lovely comment here that I would like to share. I think that what you've been doing during this session is what we have to do with our pupils, to be so enthusiastic, expressive, feel happy with what we're doing. Thanks a lot for all your ideas, Carol. That's,
What a
but
lovely comment.
wasn't that
Thank you.
yes?
Thank you very
But
much.
teach by example, which is just
Exactly.
the
I mean,
point that you made.
I think, because you transmit your enthusiasm, passion, whatever, you know, you're going to transmit that. You can't help transmitting it, and it's catching. And that is also what draws children in to using language.
Yes.
And they may, for the first few weeks, kind of look at you as if you've come from planet somewhere, or you're completely mad.
Who is
But
this
then they
strange
gradually,
person?
but then they join in, little by little. So
And they
yeah.
also watch their peers. What you said about, the influence of the peers. They see their peers and they learn from them as well. It's not just from the teachers. So it's a incredibly organic sort of process, isn't it, as well?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think by trying to, by working on these chunks of language, because I do feel absolutely passionate that if we want our children to get ahead, it's got to be more than just, naming the vocabulary items. But at the same time, if
Exactly.
we work on these chunks of language, every child can still participate successfully. Okay, there's always going to be some children who won't get their mouths and heads around those chunks of language, and that it doesn't matter if they
No.
don't.
No.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. So catering for different needs in the classroom, but challenging at the same time, not to underestimate children's ability.
I think that's right. No, I think sometimes we do. Sometimes we do maybe, work to the lowest common denominator, whereas actually we can be a bit more aspirational without, but still being inclusive and allowing everyone to succeed at the level they're ready to do so.
Exactly. That's a really important point. Absolutely. Okay. Let me just check if there are any. Somebody is asking, is this session recorded? Yes, it is. The session is recorded, and we'll send that to you in approximately 1 week's time. Okay. Carol, there are very few other questions, to be honest with you. There seems to be just really positive comments here, really, really positive. People are thanking you. Super interesting. Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. It's been very nice, inspiring. So thank you for such a wonderful and inspiring session. Lots of
Thank you,
excellent,
Louise.
really positive comments from our
Well,
audience.
it's been my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to when I can do it if I try in real life.
Exactly, in real life, yes. We can.
We
Okay,
can.
that's wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll see you in a few minutes' time again. Yeah, we'll say
Okay,
goodbye and
thanks a
end
lot.
all together.
Okay, bye
Fantastic.
then.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Susana Lopez. Susana, good evening. How are you?
Good
Good.
evening, Luis. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo
Good
estás?
evening. Muy
Y buenas
bien.
tardes
Todo
a
muy
todos.
bien. A todos, ¿no? Todas. Okay, so Susanna is going to do a very short presentation of Big Wheel for us now. And so, Susanna, todo tuyo.
Muy bien, gracias, Luis. Bueno, como decía Luis, vamos a dedicar esta última parte de la sesión, después de haber escuchado las magníficas propuestas que nos ha contado Carol, a contaros, pues bueno, lo que nosotros consideramos son los pilares del proyecto Big Wheel, ¿vale? Entonces, como punto de partida, a mí siempre me gusta destacar la flexibilidad de este proyecto, esto que nosotros llamamos el enfoque hop-on, hop-off, ¿vale? Con esto, lo que queremos transmitiros es la idea de que las unidades didácticas de Big Wheel básicamente no están numeradas, sino que se tratan como bloques de contenidos que vosotros podéis trabajar de la manera que nosotros las hemos secuenciado o hacer vuestra propia secuenciación del contenido que tenéis en cada uno de los niveles. Además, los contenidos que se consideran genéricos, como son los números, las formas, los colores, se han colocado al final del cuaderno de trabajo de los alumnos para que vosotros los podáis introducir y podáis ir trabajando como consideráis adecuados y en el momento en que consideréis adecuados. Entonces, diríamos que Big Wheel no es un proyecto, no es un material para el que yo tengo que adaptar mi programación de aula, sino que el proyecto se adapta a mi programación de aula, de área e incluso a mi programación de curso, porque puede que queráis hacer que estos contenidos temáticos, que estos centros de interés que se están trabajando en el área de inglés coincidan también con los que se están trabajando en castellano, por ejemplo. Bueno, dicho esto, pasamos al siguiente punto, que es la educación en valores, el aprendizaje socioemocional que destacaba antes y que, sobre el que ya hablaba Carol anteriormente. En este caso, para nosotros es muy importante este tipo de contenido, que sabemos que además trabajáis de una manera muy transversal en todas las áreas que se trabajan en infantil, y el área de inglés pues no puede ser menos. Por lo tanto, va a tener una presencia en todas estas unidades temáticas de las que yo os hablaba anteriormente, en forma de historia, y también con una canción que los niños pueden cantar, interpretar, bailar, bueno, pues como veíamos antes que estaban haciendo Luis y Carol, por ejemplo, ¿vale? Bueno, el tercer punto a destacar, algo que se destaca como recursos de bilingual, es todo el contenido audiovisual del proyecto. Fijaos, en una unidad, en una de estas unidades temáticas, nos vamos a encontrar con 4 tipos de contenido audiovisual diferente. Por un lado vamos a tener una historia animada, interpretada por Mimi y su familia, como veis ahí. A esa historia le sigue una canción cuyo objetivo es trabajar el vocabulario que se ha presentado en la historia anteriormente. Tenemos también estos vídeos que llamamos de cultura, donde los 2 niños con su tío, que también Caro lo mencionaba anteriormente, nos van a poner en diferentes situaciones, con rimas, con chants, con canciones, nos van a presentar diferentes contenidos de la cultura británica. Evidentemente, todo ello en un contexto muy cotidiano para los alumnos, para la edad que tienen los alumnos con los que estamos trabajando. Además de esto, el cuarto tipo de vídeo que tenemos, como os digo, en cada una de las unidades, ¿vale? Son los vídeos de speaking, donde se establece una situación comunicativa, y aquí se van a trabajar algo que consideramos muy importante, que son las life skills, las habilidades de vida. Y nos vamos a encontrar pues con contenidos del tipo tomar decisiones, interactuar con otros, compartir, etcétera. Como os digo, en un lenguaje muy adaptado a la edad de los niños de la de los niños de infantil, pero con contenidos muy significativos para ellos. Lo mencionaba también Carol, pero quiero hacer mucho más énfasis incluso sobre este contenido, que son los proyectos que aparecen en todos los niveles, ¿vale? Bueno, por supuesto, hay una propuesta de aprendizaje cooperativo, hay una propuesta muy pautada, tanto para el alumno, es decir, las instrucciones que tiene el alumno con las que va a trabajar, que nosotros mismos, los profesores, se lo vamos a explicar, pero también una amplia propuesta de trabajo en la guía didáctica, en las notas para el profesor, ¿vale? Aún así, a pesar de que es una propuesta muy pautada, y también lo comentaba Carol, sí que esto va a dar lugar, tiene mucho espacio, diríamos, para la creatividad, ¿vale? Por lo tanto, los alumnos sí que van a tener ese espacio para hacer su propio producto final, por así decir, dentro del proyecto. Los proyectos están, ahora vamos a ver en un momento cómo se distribuyen dentro del material, pero sí que me gusta también comentar que son totalmente opcionales según el tiempo del que dispongáis, ¿vale? Que están ahí para utilizarlos si consideráis que tenéis tiempo suficiente para realizarlos. Bueno, hablaba yo de cómo se distribuye el contenido, ¿vale? Decíamos al principio que bilingual es un material, es un proyecto muy flexible en lo que a contenidos se refiere, también en lo que a necesidades según contexto se refiere. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? Podemos ofreceros 2 versiones diferentes del proyecto, una que diríamos estándar y otra que diríamos bilingual plus. Y bueno, esto tiene que ver con el contenido, con la cantidad de contenido que os vamos a ofrecer en una o en otra. En el caso de bilingual estándar, lo que vamos a encontrar son 6 unidades temáticas con 3 proyectos por nivel y una unidad starter, ¿vale? Como decíamos, por supuesto, más todo el material, el contenido que yo indicaba anteriormente de festivals y contenidos genéricos que aparecen al final. Y en el caso de la versión Plus, ¿vale? La versión que diríamos ampliada, vamos a tener 8 unidades temáticas por nivel con 8 proyectos, es decir, un proyecto por cada una de las unidades más una unidad starter, ¿ok? Bueno, como decía, depende un poco de vuestras necesidades, de vuestra necesidad según la carga lectiva que tengáis en cada uno de vuestros centros, de vuestros contextos. La versión Big Wheel Plus la recomendamos para aquellos centros que tienen ampliación horaria o que son propiamente centros bilingües. Y enlazada con esta idea del centro bilingüe, también quiero destacar que el vocabulario que se trabaja en los 3 niveles de Big Wheel es un perfecto, digamos que es un trampolín ideal para aquellos alumnos que cuando llegan a primero de primaria pasan a dar contenido curricular en inglés, como puede ser Natural Science, la asignatura de ciencias naturales, ¿vale? Esto es algo que tenemos que tener en cuenta y que lo tenemos que ver como un beneficio de trabajar con el proyecto. Bien, ¿qué le ofrece o qué componentes va a tener el alumno que trabaja con Big Wheel? Pues por un lado, ya lo venimos mencionando, el cuadernillo de trabajo, ¿vale? Que como veis ahí viene con espiral, pero viene con espiral en la parte superior para que no haya ninguna dificultad ni para diestros ni para zurdos a la hora de trabajarlo. Y lo digo yo que soy zurda y he sufrido mucho lo de tener a un lado, ¿no? La espiral o el lomo del libro. Bueno, entonces os digo, cuadernillo de trabajo, ¿vale? La idea es para poder trabajar en el aula y además de eso, con la idea de que no se termina de aprender cuando uno se va a casa o cuando el cole se acaba, hemos incorporado una plataforma digital para que el alumno pueda seguir trabajando desde casa, ¿vale? O una vez que está fuera del aula. ¿Qué tiene de novedoso esta plataforma? Que es una propuesta de actividades interactivas para que sigan trabajando y sigan practicando los contenidos que se han ido trabajando en el aula. Pues bueno, mediante una propuesta gamificada, los alumnos se van a enfrentar a diferentes retos que, como digo, son el contenido que han trabajado en las diferentes unidades temáticas del material con el que trabajan en clase y mediante esa propuesta gamificada van a ir consiguiendo esos retos y van a ir ganando o consiguiendo recompensas. De verdad que este es un material, es un componente altamente motivador para los alumnos. Lo vemos en los diferentes usuarios del proyecto, ¿vale? Esto sería para el alumno. Vamos a mirar ahora qué tendría el profesor. Bueno, pues la guía didáctica, como decíamos antes, además de un recorrido por lo que pueden ser los diferentes contenidos que se presentan, muchas propuestas, muchas sugerencias, variantes de la misma actividad, propuestas lúdicas, didácticas, de todo, ¿vale? En esa guía didáctica. Y junto con la guía didáctica también se incluye un pack de adaptación, donde aquí lo que tenéis son diferentes propuestas imprimibles que podéis llevar a clase los primeros días del curso, especialmente esto con infantil 3 años, sabéis que pues nunca sabemos cómo llegan los alumnos, ¿no? Y también el verano pues hace sus estragos. Entonces son propuestas muy sencillas para que podáis, antes de entrar a trabajar con el material propiamente dicho, podáis hacer uso de ellas, ¿vale? Esto en cuanto a contenidos a componentes para vosotros. Además está el material de aula. Hablábamos de las historias que están presentes en todas las unidades temáticas. Vamos a disponer de estas story cards, ¿vale? Que reproducen las diferentes viñetas de las historias con las que estamos trabajando en el libro y que por detrás además tienen el texto, ¿vale? Reproducen el texto para que nosotros las podamos ir leyendo. Tenemos además de story cards flashcards con todo el vocabulario que se trabaja en los 3 diferentes niveles. Tenemos esa rueda que nos mostraba antes Carol y que además para presentar el vocabulario, como decía ella, pues puede darnos juego para muchísimas propuestas lúdicas que vienen, muchas de ellas, muchísimas, en la guía didáctica, como os decía, ¿vale? Tenemos también los CDs de aula, por si los queréis seguir trabajando de esta manera, y por supuesto Mimi, nuestra mascota estrella del material Big Wheel. Bien, esto en lo que a material de aula y material impreso, físico, que vosotros vais a tener para poder trabajar con el proyecto Big Wheel. Pero además, Big Wheel nos ofrece un amplio soporte tanto digital como pedagógico. Empiezo por la parte digital, ¿vale? Lo mismo que decíamos, que los alumnos van a tener acceso a una plataforma digital que pueden trabajar en casa, con sus familias, etcétera, y que les hace toda esa propuesta gamificada, vosotros, profesores, vais a tener ese acceso con todos los contenidos digitales que podéis trabajar en pizarra digital, ¿vale? Esto por un lado. Pero la plataforma no es solo eso, no son solo los recursos de aula, sino que también vais a tener la oportunidad de hacer un seguimiento del material del trabajo que los alumnos hacen en casa a través de esa plataforma gamificada. Por lo tanto, si así lo deseáis, podéis crear diferentes grupos que os permitirán ver qué trabajo extra, ¿vale? Qué refuerzo está haciendo el alumno en casa en esta plataforma de la que os hablaba. Entonces tenemos por un lado nuestros propios contenidos para trabajar en pizarra, tenemos ese seguimiento que podemos hacer del trabajo de los alumnos en clase, tenemos también esta sección que llamamos Tap and Teach, ¿vale? Que básicamente lo que busca, y esto sabemos que es importante, es ahorraros tiempo en planificación de clases. Por lo tanto, lo que vais a encontrar aquí es una propuesta muy secuenciada. También os digo que totalmente adaptable y personalizable a lo que vosotros queráis, ¿vale? Pero como punto de partida puede ser algo que os ayude a encaminar las diferentes sesiones, ¿sí? Y en lo que a soporte pedagógico se refiere, pues no estáis solos. Por supuesto, Macmillan está con vosotros, pero además contamos con una serie de vídeos que Carol presenta y que están basados en clases auténticas y que nos dan infinidad de ideas también para trabajar en el aula, ¿vale? Esto también lo tenéis aquí desde la plataforma. Pues dicho todo esto, y en muy poco tiempo he intentado destacaros lo más significativo de nuestro proyecto bilingual, ¿vale? Voy a dar paso a Mimi, antes de que vuelva a pasar con nosotros Luis, por si tuvierais alguna pregunta en referencia a nuestro proyecto. Muchas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, Susana. Muchas gracias. Many thanks. Yes, if anybody has a question, as we did before with Carol, on your screen you can write in comments or questions. If you do have any comments or any questions to ask Susana now regarding this course, Big Wheel for Pre-Primary, please do so now. And we'll just give people a couple of seconds. Vamos a darles un par de segundos, ¿vale? Me gusta mucho, claro, que los vídeos de Carol son espectaculares, ¿eh? También aquí, sí. Hay tanto soporte, ¿no?
Claro,
sí,
sabemos
les
cómo
enganchan
a los niños
sí, pero las ideas, ¿no? Este soporte pedagógico, tanto en el guía, ¿no? Para el profesor, pero también en la plataforma, también aquí con estos vídeos que son de una persona que conoce a fondo estas edades y ha trabajado tantos años y tiene tantas ideas a compartir con nosotros. Creo que es un lujo,
Sí.
No tenemos preguntas, Susana, tenemos comentarios. Thank you so much for this very informative session. Ha sido muy clara la presentación también, alguien dice. Para mí también ha sido muy claro, así que no vamos a estar más tiempo de la gente. La gente ha estado conectada con nosotros, have been with us now since 6 o'clock, and now it's just past 7:30, and I'm sure everybody would like to have a break now, but it's been wonderful that you've all been here together with us. Carol is back. Thank you so much for coming back, Carol. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk. And thank you, Susanna, for that very clear presentation. It's been great to show all that this wonderful course has to offer. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you, and actually a lovely way to round off the season, I think. We've done a lot of events this year, but it's been lovely, Carol, to be able to do this with you. in 2021 and round off this year's season of events with this wonderful course and wonderful session. So thank you so much.
Well,
And
thank you
just
as
to,
well, Louise and Susanna. Thank you for your
yes,
Thanks very
wonderful
much.
presentation
Thank
as
you.
well. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And
It's great to
just a
see you.
reminder, yes, it's great to be here, and hopefully we'll be able to meet each other in person in the not too distant future. I do hope so. We can do that
Ojalá.
again. Ojalá, exactly.
Ojalá.
So that's it. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Susanna. And thanks to all you teachers out there. And I really wish you all the very best possible end to what's been a tremendous year for everybody, but that you've done a fantastic job. So thank you. And see you
Absolutely.
next
Yeah.
course. Okay. Bye.